The mockery begins. The Great Assembly, the massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council stretched across the horizon of Nexus Prime, its transparent walls reflecting the light of 3 suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different species gathered in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate the unique needs of their biology. The Zephyrians floated in their anti-gravity chambers, their silvery forms shimmering with each breath. The Chromac delegation sat in pools of liquid methane, their scaled bodies perfectly adapted to the frigid environment. The Vorthok representatives hung from the ceiling, their bat-like wings folded neatly against their backs. At the center of this magnificent assembly stood High Counselor Zerion, a tall, elegant being from the Altarian system. His 4 arms gestured gracefully as he addressed the gathering, his voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix that allowed all species to understand one another. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Zerion began, his tone carrying the weight of authority earned through millennia of leadership. "Today we convene to discuss the latest survey results from the Outer Rim territories. Our exploration fleets have catalogued 17 new worlds, 12 of which show signs of intelligent life." A murmur of interest rippled through the assembly. New civilizations always brought excitement, though most were inevitably disappointing. The galaxy had seen countless species rise and fall, and truly advanced civilizations were becoming increasingly rare. Commander Vilox of the Zephyrian fleet materialized at the speaking platform, his translucent form flickering with pride. "Most of these worlds show promise," he reported, his voice carrying a musical quality that was characteristic of his species. "The Kepler 442 system has developed spaceflight and shows remarkable progress in quantum mechanics. The beings of Wolf 359 have mastered genetic engineering and have begun terraforming their moons." The assembly listened with respectful attention as Vilox continued his report. Each new civilization represented potential allies, trading partners, or at worst, manageable threats. The galaxy had long since established protocols for integrating new species into the greater community of worlds. However, Vilox continued, and something in his tone made the entire assembly lean forward with anticipation. "There is one world that has caught our attention for different reasons." A holographic display materialized above the assembly, showing a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked almost pristine, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans that caught the light beautifully. "This is the 3rd planet from the star they call Sol," Vilox explained, and several beings in the assembly began to chuckle. "The dominant species calls themselves humans, and they inhabit the planet they've named Earth." The laughter grew louder, and Zarian had to raise one of his 4 hands to restore order. "Please, Commander Vilox, continue with your report. These humans," Vilox said, his voice barely containing his amusement, "have been observed for the past 50 standard years. They have only recently achieved basic spaceflight, and even then, they can barely reach their own moon. Their technology is laughably primitive. They still burn fossil fuels for energy, use metal projectiles as weapons, and communicate through electromagnetic waves." The assembly erupted in laughter. The Chromac delegation slapped their fins against the sides of their pools, creating great splashes of methane. The Vorthok screeched with glee, their high-pitched voices echoing through the dome. Even the normally stoic Altarians allowed themselves small smiles. "Surely you jest," called out Diplomat Thane from the Regilian contingent. "No species could be that backward and still achieve spaceflight. Did they steal the technology from a more advanced civilization?" "That's the most amusing part," Vilox replied, his form flickering with what appeared to be suppressed laughter. They developed it themselves. Our observers report that these humans actually strapped themselves to controlled explosions and launched themselves into space. They call it rocket science and seem quite proud of it. The laughter became almost deafening. Several delegates had to be helped by their assistants as they struggled to contain their mirth. The very idea of using explosions to achieve spaceflight seemed absurd to beings who had mastered gravitic manipulation, quantum tunneling, and dimensional folding. "There's more," Vilox continued once the laughter had died down. "They conduct wars with kinetic weapons, heal their sick with chemical compounds, and store their knowledge on physical devices. They haven't even developed basic telepathy or consciousness transfer. Most remarkably, they seem to age and die naturally, showing no signs of understanding basic life extension techniques." High Counselor Zarian shook his head in amazement. "It's difficult to believe that any species could be so primitive. Are you certain they're actually intelligent?" "Oh, they're intelligent," Vilox assured him. "They've developed art, music, and complex social structures. They've even begun to understand the basic laws of physics, but their applications are so crude, so inefficient, that they're hardly worth considering as a potential member of the galactic community. What is our recommendation regarding this?" "Earth," Zarian asked formally. "Complete non-interference," Vilox replied without hesitation. "They pose no threat to any civilized world, and they have nothing to offer us. Our projections suggest they'll either destroy themselves through warfare or environmental collapse within the next few centuries. If they somehow survive, they might achieve basic interstellar travel in a few thousand years. But even then, they'd be millennia behind the most primitive species in our community." The assembly nodded in agreement. It was a familiar story they had seen countless times before. A species would show early promise, develop basic technology, and then either join the galactic community or fade into obscurity. These humans seemed destined for the latter. "Very well," Zarian declared. "Earth and its human inhabitants will be classified as a non-contact world. We will maintain minimal observation to ensure they don't accidentally develop anything dangerous. But otherwise, they will be ignored." As the assembly moved on to other matters, few gave the small blue world another thought. It was just another primitive planet inhabited by a species that would likely be forgotten within a few generations. But in the weeks that followed, a sense of unease began to settle over the galaxy. It started with small things, reports of unusual readings from the outer rim, strange energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. The Zephyrian monitoring stations began picking up anomalous signals, and several exploration vessels reported equipment malfunctions that couldn't be explained. Then came the discovery that would change everything. The threat emerges. Darkelpis, the galaxy's foremost expert on celestial mechanics, stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Her normally composed demeanor was replaced by obvious panic, her 6 tentacles writhing with agitation as she manipulated the holographic display. The object was first detected by our deep space monitoring array 3 standard days ago, she explained, her voice tight with fear. Initial calculations suggested it was simply a large asteroid, possibly dislodged from the outer asteroid belt of the Centauri system. The hologram showed a massive, irregularly shaped object hurtling through space. It was dark, pitted, and unremarkable except for its size, nearly 20 kilometers in diameter. However, Dr. Kelpis continued, her tentacles now trembling visibly. "Upon closer examination, we've determined that this object is on a direct collision course with Nexus Prime. Impact will occur in precisely 14 standard days. The assembly fell silent. Nexus Prime was not just the seat of galactic government, it was home to over 2 billion beings from dozens of species. It was the cultural and economic heart of their civilization. Surely our planetary defense systems can handle a simple asteroid, suggested Councillor Brix from the Andromedan sector. That's what we thought, Dr. Kelpis replied, her voice hollow. We've run every simulation, tried every conventional approach. The object is too large and moving too fast. Our gravitational manipulators can barely affect its trajectory. Our energy weapons can chip away at its surface, but we'd need months to reduce it to a manageable size. High Councillor Zarian leaned forward, his 4 arms pressed together in thought. What about using the dimensional fold generators to transport it elsewhere? We tried that, Dr. Kelpis said, shaking her head. The object appears to be composed of some unknown material that resists dimensional manipulation. We can't get a lock on it. Panic began to spread through the assembly. Representatives from dozens of worlds began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony of fear and desperation. The Chromac delegation began rapid-fire calculations in their native tongue, while the Vorthok representatives took to the air, circling the dome in agitated flight patterns. There must be something we can do, pleaded Ambassador Qualox from the Vega system. We are the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Surely our combined knowledge can find a solution. But as the hours passed, it became clear that even their vast technological superiority was useless against this particular threat. The asteroid designated Harbinger by the scientific community continued its inexorable approach toward Nexus Prime, **. The galaxy's greatest minds worked around the clock, but every solution they proposed had fatal flaws. The asteroid was too large, too fast, and too resistant to their technology. It seemed that all their advancement, all their knowledge, all their pride in their technological superiority meant nothing in the face of this cosmic catastrophe. Then, on the 7th day, something unexpected happened. The impossible offer the message arrived on a frequency that hadn't been used in decades. Electromagnetic waves, the most primitive form of communication known to galactic civilization. Most modern receivers didn't even monitor those frequencies anymore, considering them obsolete. Only the automated systems in the outer monitoring stations still picked up such transmissions, and usually only to log them as curiosities. The message was simple, transmitted in basic mathematical concepts that any spacefaring civilization could understand. This is Earth. We have observed your crisis. We can help. Preparing assistance. Do not interfere. The message was repeated every hour, broadcast on multiple frequencies with increasing power. By the time it reached the attention of the Galactic Council, it had been transmitting for nearly 12 hours. The emergency session that convened to discuss this development was unlike any in the Council's history. The representatives who gathered were exhausted, desperate, and grasping at any possible solution to their impending doom. "You're telling me," said High Councillor Zarion, his voice thick with disbelief, "that the primitive humans from Earth think they can solve a problem that has stumped our greatest minds?" Commander Vilox, who had originally reported on Earth's primitive nature, flickered with what appeared to be embarrassment. "The transmission is definitely from Earth. Our monitors have confirmed the point of origin. But I don't understand how they could even know about our situation, much less offer assistance. Perhaps they've been monitoring our communications," suggested Dr. Kelpis, though her tone suggested she found the idea unlikely with their primitive technology. Violet scoffed. They can barely communicate with their own moon. How could they possibly intercept our quantum-encoded transmissions? The debate continued for hours, but underneath the discussion was a growing sense of desperation. With only 7 days remaining until impact, they had exhausted every conventional option. Even the most outlandish proposals had been tried and failed. "What if we respond?" suggested Ambassador Quallox. "What harm could come from asking what they have in mind?" "The harm," replied Councillor Brix, his synthetic voice carrying clear disdain, "is that we would be admitting to the galaxy that we need help from a species that hasn't even mastered basic energy manipulation. The political implications alone would be catastrophic, more catastrophic than the destruction of Nexus Prime." Quallox shot back. The argument might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by another transmission from Earth. This one was different, longer, more detailed, and transmitted with enough power to reach every corner of the galaxy. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We have analyzed your asteroid problem and developed a solution. We are launching in 6 hours. Our flight time to your location is approximately 60 hours. We request that you do not interfere with our vessel or our mission. We understand the stakes." The transmission ended, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. The very idea that these primitive humans would launch a mission to help them was beyond comprehension. They had no understanding of the distances involved, the technology required, or the dangers they would face. "This is madness," Vilox declared. "They don't even have faster-than-light travel. How do they expect to reach us in 60 hours? "Perhaps," Dr. Kelpis suggested quietly, "we should observe their attempt. If nothing else, it might provide some insight into their primitive methods." What none of them expected was that the primitive humans might actually have something to teach them about solving impossible problems. Asterisk. The arrival, the impossible journey, the Earth vessel Prometheus defied every expectation the Galactic Council had about human technology. When their long-range sensors first detected the ship's approach, the readings made no sense. The vessel was traveling at speeds that should have been impossible for a species that had barely achieved basic spaceflight. Dr. Kelpis stood in the observation deck of the Nexus Prime orbital station, her 6 tentacles manipulating multiple holographic displays simultaneously. The data streaming in from their sensors painted a picture that challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. "The vessel is definitely of human origin," she reported to the assembled observers, "but it's using a propulsion system we've never seen before. It's not gravitational manipulation, it's not quantum tunneling, and it's certainly not dimensional folding." High Counselor Zarian studied the readings with growing amazement. "What are those energy signatures? They're unlike anything in our databases." "That's what's so remarkable," Dr. Kelpis replied, her voice filled with scientific curiosity despite their desperate situation. "They appear to be using a form of controlled fusion reaction, but the efficiency levels are far beyond what we thought possible with their technology. Somehow, they've achieved sustained nuclear fusion in a way that produces more energy than our most advanced reactors." Commander Vilox materialized beside them, his translucent form flickering with agitation. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports clearly showed that humans had barely achieved fission technology. How could they have developed fusion to this degree without us detecting it?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Quallox, who had been quietly monitoring Earth's public communications, suddenly spoke up. "I've been analyzing their information networks. It appears that humans have a tendency to keep their most advanced projects secret, even from their own population. They call it classified or black project development. You mean they deliberately hide their technological progress? Z asked, his forearms expressing confusion. Why would any species do that? Competition, Qualox explained. Unlike our unified galactic civilization, humans are still divided into separate political entities. They compete with each other, which apparently drives rapid innovation. Each group tries to develop superior technology to gain advantages over the others. The implications of this revelation rippled through the observation deck. A species that was driven by competition rather than cooperation might develop in ways that peaceful civilizations couldn't imagine. The vessel is slowing, Dr. Kelpis announced. It's approaching the asteroid field. The Prometheus came into visual range, and the assembled observers got their first look at human spacecraft engineering. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, crude, angular, and seemingly built from the heaviest materials available. Where their own vessels were elegant curves of crystalline composites and exotic alloys, the human ship looked like it had been constructed from scrap metal and welded together by primitive tools. Look at that design, Vilox marveled, his form flickering with what might have been admiration. It's so ... brutal. Every surface is covered with sensors, weapons, and equipment. They've packed more functionality into that hull than we manage. In vessels twice the size, the ship's communications array crackled to life, broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The voice that emerged was clear, confident, and completely at odds with the primitive vessel it came from. This is Captain Chen of the Prometheus to any listening stations. We are beginning our approach to the target asteroid. Please maintain a safe distance and do not interfere with our operations. The human solution, what happened next, would be talked about in the galactic community for millennia to come. The Prometheus didn't approach the asteroid with the careful, methodical precision that characterized advanced civilizations. Instead, it came in fast and hard, using a combination of gravitational slingshots and precise thruster burns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They're flying directly into the asteroid field, Dr. Kelpis reported, her voice tight with disbelief. That's the most dangerous approach possible. Perhaps they don't understand the risks, suggested Councillor Briggs. But as they watched, it became clear that the humans understood the risks perfectly. They were simply choosing to ignore them in favor of speed and efficiency. The Prometheus wove through the asteroid field with an agility that their massive ship shouldn't have possessed, dodging obstacles with split-second precision. Their pilot is either insane or brilliant, Vilox observed. No sane being would attempt those maneuvers. The truth was that Captain Chen and her crew were both. They had trained for this mission in Earth's most hostile environments, pushing themselves and their equipment to the absolute limits. While the galactic civilizations had grown comfortable with their advanced technology, humans had developed something that couldn't be replicated by even the most sophisticated machines: the ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome impossible odds through sheer determination. Asterisk. As the Prometheus approached the massive asteroid, its purpose became clear. The ship wasn't carrying some exotic superweapon or advanced technological solution. Instead, it was loaded with something that made the galactic observers gasp in amazement. Nuclear explosives, but not the crude devices they had expected. They're using controlled nuclear charges, Dr. Kelpis reported, her tentacles dancing over the sensor readings. But the precision is extraordinary. They're not trying to destroy the asteroid, they're trying to change its trajectory. The human strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of attempting to destroy or move the entire asteroid, they would using precisely placed nuclear devices to create thrust vectors that would gradually alter its course. It was a solution that required incredible precision, perfect timing, and a deep understanding of orbital mechanics. "The first charges are detonating," announced Dr. Kelpis, her voice filled with awe. The explosions were perfectly synchronized, creating a series of thrust vectors that began to push the asteroid away from its collision course with Nexus Prime. But the humans weren't finished. The Prometheus continued to move around the asteroid, placing additional charges with mechanical precision. "They're treating it like a sculpture," Zarian observed. "Each explosion is carefully planned to create the exact force needed at the exact location required." "More than that," Dr. Kelpis added, her excitement growing. "They're calculating the cumulative effect of dozens of explosions over time. This isn't just precision, it's artistry." As the hours passed, the asteroid's trajectory began to change. Slowly at first, then with increasing momentum, the massive object began to curve away from its intercept course with Nexus Prime. The human solution was working. The moment of truth, the final phase of the human operation, was the most dangerous. With the asteroid's trajectory sufficiently altered, the Prometheus moved in for what Captain Chen called the finishing touch. The ship positioned itself at a calculated point and prepared for its final maneuver. "They're going to use their own ship as a gravitational anchor," Dr. Kelpis announced, her voice filled with amazement. "They're going to fire their engines at full power while grappling the asteroid to give it one final push." The assembled observers watched in stunned silence as the primitive human vessel attached itself to the massive asteroid using what appeared to be simple magnetic clamps and steel cables. Then, with a display of raw power that shook the very fabric of space, the Prometheus fired its fusion engines at maximum output. The ship's hull began to glow from the incredible stress, and several of the observers feared they were about to witness the destruction of the brave human crew. But the vessel held together, its crude but effective construction proving more resilient than the elegant designs of more advanced civilizations. "The asteroid is clear," Dr. Kelpis announced, her voice barely audible above the cheering that had erupted throughout the observation deck. "Nexus Prime is safe." The Prometheus disengaged from the asteroid and began its journey back toward human space. But before it departed, Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communications array one final time. "This is Captain Chen to the Galactic Council. The asteroid has been successfully diverted. Nexus Prime is no longer in danger. We hope this demonstrates that Earth stands ready to contribute to the galactic community despite our primitive technology." The transmission ended, leaving the assembled observers in contemplative silence. They had witnessed something that challenged their fundamental assumptions about technology, civilization, and the nature of intelligence itself. The days that followed, the Galactic Council held unprecedented emergency sessions to discuss the implications of what they had witnessed. The humans had accomplished something that their most advanced civilizations couldn't achieve, using technology that was considered primitive by galactic standards. High Counselor Zarian stood before the full assembly, his forearms raised for "Attention, fellow beings. We have learned something important about the nature of intelligence and innovation. The humans of Earth have shown us that advancement isn't always about having the most sophisticated technology. Sometimes it's about how you use what you have." The discussion that followed was intense and far-reaching. Representatives from dozens of worlds shared their own experiences with human ingenuity, piecing together a picture of a species that had survived and thrived not through technological superiority, but through adaptability, creativity, and sheer determination. They call it making do, reported Ambassador Quallox, who had become something of an expert on human culture. When they don't have the perfect tool for a job, they find a way to make an imperfect tool work. When they face impossible odds, they find ways to change the definition of impossible. Commander Vilox, who had originally dismissed humans as primitive, found himself forced to reassess his conclusions. Their technology may be crude by our standards, but their applications are brilliant. They've achieved things we never thought possible because they approach problems from directions we'd never consider. The most significant revelation came from Dr. Kelpis, who had been analyzing the human ship's performance data. Their fusion technology is actually more efficient than ours, she announced to the stunned assembly. We've been so focused on elegance and refinement that we've overlooked practical innovations. The humans have developed solutions that work better than our advanced systems because they prioritize function over form. The implications were staggering. If humans could outperform galactic technology in one area, what other innovations might they have developed? What other assumptions about primitive civilizations might be wrong? The invitation 1 month after the asteroid crisis, the Galactic Council took an unprecedented step. For the first time in its history, the Council voted to invite a species to join the galactic community without that species having applied for membership. The message was transmitted to Earth using the most advanced communication systems available, but it was also broadcast on the primitive electromagnetic frequencies that humans preferred. The message was simple and direct. To the people of Earth, from the Galactic Council, your actions have saved billions of lives and demonstrated that intelligence and innovation transcend technological sophistication. We formally invite Earth to join the galactic community as a full member with all rights and privileges. Your unique perspective and problem-solving abilities would be invaluable to our civilization. The response from Earth came within hours, transmitted with the same confidence that had characterized their asteroid mission. To the Galactic Council, from the people of Earth, we are honored by your invitation and accept with enthusiasm. We look forward to sharing our knowledge and learning from yours. We believe that together we can solve problems that neither of us could tackle alone. The legacy is later, when historians studied the events surrounding the Nexus Prime asteroid crisis. They would identify it as the moment when the galactic community learned an important lesson about the nature of intelligence and progress. The humans had shown them that being primitive in some ways didn't mean being inferior in others. Earth's integration into the galactic community was swift and successful. Human innovations began appearing in technologies across the galaxy, while human problem-solving techniques were studied and adopted by civilizations thousands of years more advanced. The asteroid that had once threatened to destroy Nexus Prime was eventually converted into a monument, a reminder that solutions sometimes come from the most unexpected sources. Engraved on its surface, in dozens of languages, were the words that Captain Chen had spoken during the crisis. Every problem has a solution, you just have to be willing to look for it in places others haven't thought to search. The galaxy had learned that evolution and progress weren't always about becoming more sophisticated. Sometimes they were about maintaining the courage to try new approaches, even when everyone else said they were impossible. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not as the most advanced species, but as the most adaptable, and in a universe full of impossible challenges that made all the difference. The humans who had once been mocked as primitive had become the galaxy's most valued problem solvers. They had proven that intelligence wasn't about having the best technology, it was about knowing how to use whatever technology you had to achieve impossible things. And across the galaxy, no one was laughing at Earth anymore. Asterisk.